Hello, welcome to Puffs and Poetry. I'm your host, Jessica, a writer, cannabis aficionado, and poetry lover. Today, we are rolling up a Type 2 joint, which has a blend of CBD and THC, and we are reading from the works of American poet William Carlos Williams. William Carlos Williams was born in the 1880s in New Jersey, and he died there almost 80 years later. William Carlos Williams is often considered to be one of the true and classic American poets. In addition to being a poet, he was an obstetrician and a pediatrician. So he was a doctor, and many of his poems were written on prescription pads, which are, as you may know, small pieces of paper, smaller than this book. So his poems, in this duality of his life, are characterized by their brevity and their direct language. Unlike many of the other poets of his time, William Carlos Williams did not employ pomp or pretension into his poems. They are the straightforward musings of a blunt doctor. William Carlos Williams was, by his own admission, quite the womanizer. And he lived a very full life, though he rarely left New Jersey. You may be familiar with one of his works on a red wheelbarrow, which we will be reading today. I like William Carlos Williams' poems, number one, because they're brief, and I always appreciate brevity in a poem. I also appreciate straightforward language, which he employs generously. But also because in his musings and his poems, he is often, and intentionally or unintentionally, very funny. There we are. Let's get into it. This lighter is dying and the wind is blowing, which creates an interesting circumstance for trying to light my joint. There we go. No movie magic here. We keep it real on Puffs and Poetry. All right, let's get into the works of William Carlos Williams. Our first poem today is called Pastoral. When I was younger, it was plain to me I must make something of myself. Older now, I walk back streets, admiring the houses of the very poor. Roof out of line with sides, the yards cluttered with old chicken wire, ashes, furniture gone wrong. The fences and outhouses built of barrel staves and parts of boxes, all, if I am fortunate, smeared a bluish green that, properly weathered, pleases me best of all colors. No one will believe this of vast importance to the nation. Our next poem is called Danse Russe, and it is probably my favorite poem that William Carlos Williams wrote. And you'll see why by the end of it. This poem is called Danse Russe. If I, when my wife is sleeping, and the baby and Kathleen are sleeping. And the sun is a flame-white disk in silken mists above shining trees. If I, in my north room, dance naked, grotesquely before my mirror, waving my shirt round my head and singing softly to myself, I am lonely, lonely. I was born to be lonely. I am best so. If I admire my arms, my face, my shoulders, flanks, and buttocks against the yellow-drawn shades, who shall say that I am not the happy genius of my household? I love that ending line. Who shall say I am not the happy genius of my household? Our next poem, trying my hardest to keep this lit. Our next poem is called Complaint. They call me and I go. It is a frozen road past midnight, a dust of snow caught in the rigid wheel tracks. The door opens, I smile, enter, and shake off the cold. Here is a great woman on her side in the bed. She is sick, perhaps vomiting, perhaps laboring to give birth to a 10th child. Joy, joy. Night is a room darkened for lovers. Through the jealousies, the sun has sent one gold needle. I pick the hair from her eyes and watch her misery with compassion. We've got a little canoeing going on here, but we'll let it go. Our next poem is called Complete Destruction. It was an icy day. We buried the cat, then took her box and set match to it in the backyard. Those fleas that escaped earth and fire died by cold. Let's see if we can fix this real quick before we get into our next poem. There we go. Our next poem is another one of my favorites by William Carlos Williams. It is an untitled poem from the book Spring and All. This is the time of year when boys 15 and 17 wear 2 horned lilac blossoms in their caps, or over one ear. What is it that does this? It is a certain sort, drivers for grocers or taxi drivers, white and colored, fellows that let their hair grow long in a curve over one eye, horned purple. Dirty satyrs, it is vulgarity raised to the last power. They have stolen them, broken the bushes apart with a curse for the owner. Lilacs. They stand in the doorways on the business streets with a sneer on their faces adorned with blossoms. Out of their sweet heads, dark kisses, rough faces. Our next poem is William Carlos Williams' most famous poem. It is also unnamed from the book Spring and All, but you may recognize it from an English class. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Our next poem is called Proletariat Portrait. And if you needed a reminder that these poems were written in the 20th century, there is your reminder. Proletariat Portrait. A big, young, bare-headed woman in an apron. her hair slicked back, standing on the street, one stockinged foot toeing the sidewalk, her shoe in her hand. Looking intently into it, she pulls out the paper insole to find the nail that has been hurting her. We have one more poem today, and this poem is the epitome of a William Carlos Williams poem. It is prescription pad length, very short, very straightforward, and, in my opinion, quite funny. Ow. Grab the joint too far up. This is called Breakfast. 20 sparrows on a scattered turd share and share alike. Well, that is everything that I had for you today. Thank you for spending some time with me and William Carlos Williams. I hope you enjoyed his poems. If you consumed cannabis, rolled up, applied a topical, had an edible, I'd love to know about it. If cannabis has benefited your life in any way, I'd love to hear about it. That's all I have for you until next week. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and have a wonderful day.